afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Go Beyond. My name is Alyssa Robinson, and I am here with our senior pastor, Reverend Daniel Humbert. And Go Beyond is a time that we talk a little bit more about the message from Sunday. And we are smack in the middle of Advent. Well, maybe not in the middle. Christmas is 10 days away. But we are focusing on joy this week. And so I did a little thing that brings me joy, which is wearing a funny little Christmas sweater. But I wanted to start with my most fun question today before we go into the more serious questions. Besides Joy to the World, because Joy to the World is a little too obvious for me, what song expresses joy to you more than any other, and why that song?
Can I play it? Does that work?
We'll see if Facebook allows us to do that.
Well, now it's not going to play for me.
How about you just sing it?
I love this song.
That's awesome. Okay, cut it off. Facebook's gonna take us down for copyright infringement.
Yeah, that's my favorite among secular songs. I love that song. I love the video of that song. It's full of energy. It's full of life. And the reality is, I think some people know this, but not everybody may know it. I mean, it's actually kind of a faith-based song. It really, at the very end, some of the lyrics talk about the sun, and he points up and gives birth to us or gives life to us. Are you having to field censorship?
I'm checking. I'm like, oh no, Facebook, don't yell at us.
But as regards like Christmas carols or something, because since we're in that time frame, Hark the Herald Angels Sing really brings joy to my heart. And Oh Come All Ye Faithful. Oh Come All Ye Faithful is literally one of those, what do you call those? Is it seminal memories where it just literally sort of takes you back. And every time I hear Oh Come All Ye Faithful, it is time for Christmas Eve worship, right? It's just like, no matter where I am, whether I'm in the church or just somewhere out in community or shopping or whatever, if I hear Oh Come All You Faithful, it's like, oh, it's time for Christmas Eve. It just kind of has that seminal memory for me, and it's just kind of fun.
Well, and the song I chose, it's funny because I went secular too, because there's just this one song that I heard it for the first time when I was in college, and every time I hear it, I can't help but dance. And it's the song My Doorbell by the White Stripes. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I love it. I'm not going to play it. I'll sing it.
I've never heard of them.
But I'll include a link to it in the video description. And it's just like, it's got a great drum beat, and it just like makes you want to move. And the song's like, I've been thinking about my doorbell. When you're going to ring it? When you're going to ring it? Like, I love it. It just has so much energy. And I hear the song, it puts a smile on my face. I start wiggling in my chair. And before I know it, I got to stand up. And it's just like this deep-seated joy that you can't. It's more like, and it's funny how music does that. It can be more than happiness, and it just ignites something inside of you.
I agree. I don't know what that is, but there's clearly, and music hits everybody, right? I mean, obviously we all have different preferences, but I mean, I am convinced everybody loves music of some kind, and it really does. It kind of ignites some kind of just inner joy, or certainly happiness. That's for sure.
Well, and so I'm going to transition into our more serious questions for today, because we're talking about the unstoppable joy of Christmas.
Right.
And that is, one of the things that really struck me on Sunday, because, I've been going through personal grief right now. With my grandmother died 3 weeks ago. And you talked about joy is unconditional no matter what you are experiencing. And so I just wanted to hear from you. Could you share an example of a time that you were unhappy, but you were still able to find joy, and how you did that?
Yeah, I'm going to share two. I hope fairly quickly, but one is what I would call more light, and that's just anytime I'm feeling sort of unhappy, literally sort of down, or what I call the funk, right? You're just kind of yucked up. I find joy in going out into nature and walking and sort of what I call communing with God. And that'll be anything from literally just meditating or thinking or pondering to praying, including sometimes talking out loud to God. And that just helps me find joy in the midst of the yuckness of life. And that happens, I mean, I'll use the word often. It's not like it happens every day, but I mean, that happens probably close to weekly, where I just need some time to do that. And so it's about an internal deal. Because remember, uh, not so much a definition, but that understanding of joy, of being this assurance that God holds me, and this confidence that that it's all going to go well. On a more serious note, and certainly more sort of intimate note, when my sister took her life golly, it's almost 20 years ago now, that was a huge blow to me, right? It was like, why did this happen? How could this possibly happen? She had a seemingly, good life, and she took her life. Well, that was on a Saturday, and I was scheduled to preach the very next day. And of course, I clearly couldn't do that, and so I called on a layperson at a much smaller church. I didn't have any other clergy, so I called on a layperson to step in and preach for me. But I also felt a deep need to be at church, and I knew, man, that'd just be all wonky and weird, and how would I do that? And so I literally chose to go to the church that I serve, but I went late, right? I waited until about 7, 8, 9 minutes into the service, and I literally just slipped into the back. I sat on the back row. At the time, nobody was on that row with me. And then one of the women in the church came, and she saw me and she sat with me. And I just needed to be there. I needed to be in community, and I needed to hear a good word, and I needed to experience folks, but I didn't need to engage folks, right? And so I, of course, slipped out early as well. But it was in those moments that, man, I felt uh, deeply connected to God. I felt deeply connected to the people. I felt the opportunity to know that God was with me, and that God would make something good out of what was clearly a tragedy. And so I call that joy. I mean, it's not a happy joy, but it was an inner peace that led to joy. And to me, it was all about choosing. I chose the place and the time and the circumstances to kind of make that real. I was totally in control because, I'm an introvert, so I didn't want to talk to people, and yet I needed to be there. I just needed to be in that presence and to be in that setting, and it really did bring joy.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because the Sunday after my grandmother died, and every Sunday since then, I've needed that too. And I'm also of the personality type that when I'm going through something, I don't want to talk to people. And I'm not the person that if I'm struggling, come up and hug me. Don't, like, don't. And if you text me and ask me how I'm doing and I don't text back, like,
Yeah,
it's not personal. It's just I need that time alone. And that is, man, online worship that Sunday after she died was the most I've felt God's presence in a long time.
that's good.
And to be able, and not only was I craving worship, I was craving traditional worship. I wanted the Lord's Prayer. I wanted the Apostles' Creed. I wanted the time honored traditions that I knew my grandmother grew up with, and the hymns and songs that she had written on her heart. I needed that connection. And I was able to get that from my living room in online worship, taking the alone time that I needed, but also feeling connected at the same time.
Right. And
And
that,
it didn't feel like joy at the time,
yeah.
but it was a joyful experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think all four of these concepts in the Advent season are clearly interrelated, right? Peace and hope and joy and love. And that peacefulness leads to an internal joy as well. I sense that deeply. And it's interesting because, again, joy is a choice. You chose to engage in that worship experience. You chose um, the very worship experience you wanted, the traditional one, and things like that. And so it's about a choice about how I'm going to engage whatever's happening to me. I had a conversation just this morning about, yet again, this distinction between happiness and joy, and that joy really is much more of a choice. Happiness is almost, it just sort of comes because of whatever the conditions are, right? Whether I got something I wanted, or I'm talking to the person I really like, or whatever. I mean, it just sort of comes. And I'm sure we can choose happiness, but I think it just sort of happens more than joy. I think joy is a choice.
So, my last question today, who in your life has been the greatest example of unstoppable joy?
Well, in terms of personal, is my oldest brother Michael. He is a great example of no matter what kicked him down, no matter what life circumstances kind of set him back, he's always chosen joy. He's always chosen to look at the brighter side. He's always chosen to sort of um, know that the sun's coming out tomorrow. And it's been helpful to me because, of course, he's an older sibling, so I've always sort of looked to that. And it's interesting because while he is a person of faith, he's not a demonstrative person of. I mean, he doesn't go to church. He doesn't really show any of that stuff. But I just, when I think of joy, I think of Michael, and he's a great example.
All right. Well, that is about all that we have time for today. But thank you so much for joining us on Go Beyond. We will be live streaming Go Beyond again next week. And so catch us on Monday and Wednesday at 12:30, and we'll talk about unstoppable love just in time for Christmas and the birth of Jesus. So I hope that you'll join us for that. And remember, you can catch all previous episodes of Go Beyond at tmumc.org/Go Beyond.
Go Beyond. Hey, I want to put in a cheap, shameless plug just real quick. tmumc.org/Christmas, where people can discover all of the opportunities for worship and other things during the Christmas season. So I hope that folks will find that. That'd be great.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next week.